Here is the script for SmackDown. Didn't see this coming. She's back. Divided into 5 chapters. The narrative focuses on a generic but high-profile returning superstar to fit the She's Back theme, emphasizing the atmosphere, the shock, and the cinematic tension. The final segment of SmackDown was designed to be a coronation, a moment of undisputed arrogance for the current champion who stood in the center of the ring. The air in the arena was thick with a mixture of resignation and heat, the crowd tired of the same rhetoric being spilled week after week. The champion raised the microphone, a sneer plastered across her face, claiming there was no one left in the locker room, no one in the back, and no one on the planet who could touch her. The camera panned across the audience, capturing faces of boredom and irritation, a visual confirmation that the division had hit a stagnant wall. The commentary team was selling the dominance, speaking in low, serious tones about the stranglehold this superstar had on the roster. It felt predictable. It felt safe. It felt like the show was about to fade to black on the same note we had heard for 6 months. But then the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't a sudden explosion of pyro or a planned lighting cue. It was a glitch. The massive LED boards wrapping around the arena flickered, a jagged line of static cutting through the champion's graphic. The audio feed screeched a high-pitched tear in the sound system that made 20,000 people cover their ears simultaneously. The champion in the ring lowered the microphone, looking toward the production area with genuine confusion, breaking character for a split second. The referee signaled to the timekeeper, looking for an answer. The house lights dipped not into total darkness, but into a moody, unsettling gray. A low, rhythmic thrumming sound began to vibrate the floorboards, a bass note so deep it was felt in the chest before it was heard. The boredom evaporated instantly, replaced by a collective intake of breath. Something was wrong, or perhaps, for the first time in a long time, everything was about to be right. The first note of the music hit like a physical blow. It was a sound that hadn't been heard in this arena for years. A sonic trigger that instantly rewired the brains of every fan in attendance. For 1 second, there was absolute silence, the silence of processing the impossible. Then, the realization struck. The noise that erupted wasn't just a cheer, it was a guttural roar of disbelief that shook the hard cameras. Commentary team completely lost their composure, their headsets peaking with audio distortion as they screamed over one another. "It can't be. You kidding me?" She vowed never to step foot in this ring again. The entrance ramp was bathed in a singular, blinding spotlight, and through the haze of artificial fog, a silhouette emerged. She didn't dance. She didn't play to the crowd. She just stood there, soaking in the chaos she had single-handedly orchestrated. As she began her walk down the ramp, the camera tracked her boots hitting the steel, a slow, deliberate march that signaled war. Fans in the front row were jumping over the barricades, held back by security, tears streaming down their faces. This wasn't just a return, it was a resurrection. The champion in the ring had gone pale, the title belt slipping from her shoulder to her forearm, her posture collapsing from arrogance to defensive fear. The returning star paused at the steel steps, looking up at the lights, closing her eyes as if to inhale the electricity of the moment. The commentary table was still in disarray, one announcer standing on his chair, frantically trying to communicate the magnitude of this moment to the millions watching at home. "The landscape has just shifted," he yelled, his voice cracking. "The hierarchy of this entire industry has been shattered in 10 seconds. She slid under the bottom rope, the movement practiced and smooth, yet carrying a weight that wasn't there before. The music faded out, but the crowd refused to settle. Chant began, starting low and swelling until it deafened the audio feed, chanting her name with a reverence usually reserved for legends. She stood in the corner, leaning back, watching the champion with a gaze that was terrifyingly calm. There was no need for a microphone. The storytelling was happening entirely in the eyes. The champion, usually so vocal, was rendered mute, paralyzed by the sheer gravity of the woman standing across from her. This was the clash of 2 different eras, 2 different philosophies of wrestling, colliding in a square circle without a single punch being thrown. The returning star finally stepped toward the center. The champion flinched. It was a subtle movement, barely caught by the wide angle, but the zoom lens captured the hesitation perfectly. That flinch was the story. It told the world that despite the months of dominance, despite the gold around her waist, The champion knew she was outmatched. The returning icon didn't smile. She didn't taunt. She simply looked at the title belt, then up at the champion, and then, with slow, agonizing deliberation, pointed a finger at the WrestleMania sign hanging in the rafters. The crowd erupted again, a second wave of hysteria. "At!" But the star shook her head. She lowered her hand and pointed at the mat. "Right here, right now." The commentary team gasped. She doesn't want to wait. She wants the fight tonight. The tension in the ring was thick enough to choke on, a volatile mixture of history and immediate danger. While the ring was a tableau of tension, the scene backstage was absolute pandemonium. Producers were scrambling, headsets flying off as they tried to rewrite the remaining minutes of the broadcast on the fly. The scripted ending was trash. Reality had taken over. Social media managers were overwhelmed, their analytics dashboards lighting up like Christmas trees as the hashtag of her name trended #1 worldwide within 30 seconds. The locker room monitors were surrounded by the entire roster, heels and faces alike, breaking their kayfabe boundaries to witness history. There was a palpable sense of anxiety among the current talent spots were about to be lost. Screen time was about to disappear, and the bar had just been raised to an unreachable height. The gorilla position, usually a place of controlled chaos, was a frenzy of shouting. Executives were on phones, likely calling shareholders or network heads to explain why the ratings were about to spike through the roof. The returning Stars family, seated in the front row, but previously unnoticed, were now being swarmed by cameras, their reactions of tearful pride adding a layer of emotional legitimacy to the spectacle. This wasn't just a wrestling angle. This was a human story of redemption and return that transcended the script. The blurring of lines between what was planned and the raw emotion of the moment created a fever pitch. The referee in the ring was receiving frantic instructions through his earpiece, but he looked helpless, caught between a rock and a returning hard place. The show was supposed to be over, but nobody was going to cut the feed now. The network would stay with this until the screen went black. As the show prepared to go off the air, the physical confrontation never came. The returning star simply stepped back, allowing the champion to clutch her belt, sweating and hyperventilating. It was a power move of the highest order, proving she could dismantle the champion's confidence without lifting a finger. But as the camera zoomed in for the final close-up of the returning legend, the expression on her face shifted. It wasn't the look of a hero coming to save the day. It was something colder, more calculating. She looked directly into the camera lens, breaking the fourth wall, and offered a chillingly slight smirk. The twist wasn't that she was back to reclaim the title. The realization hit the audience and the commentary team simultaneously as she mouthed 3 words that the microphones barely picked up. "I built this." She wasn't here to compete. She was here to evict. The narrative flipped in an instant. This wasn't a nostalgic reunion tour. It was a hostile takeover. She turned her back on the champion, not out of respect, but out of total dismissal, leaving the ring as the copyright graphic appeared on the screen. The show faded to black, not with the joy of a return, but with the ominous promise of a systematic dismantling of the current era. The viewers were left with a singular, haunting thought. The hero they missed had returned as the villain the locker room feared, and the destruction was just beginning.